Towards the end of 2000s, the AKP was faced with two choices: to integrate itself to the establishment and to become a centrist party, or to fight with the leading domestic powers, most notably the Turkish military, and challenge the establishment. AKP's choice was the latter, followed by an alliance with the movement of Fethullah Gülen, who was known to have devout supporters within the Turkish bureaucracy. Gülen and his community have been powerful, especially within the social domain, beginning as early as the 1970s, which helped the movement to develop a sphere of influence within the civil society and the state bureaucracy. The first visible political action by this alliance was the launching of a purge named Operation Ergenekon in 2007, with the aim of eliminating the political statu quo in Turkey. This purge was followed by another operation named Balyoz, meaning the sledgehammer, where numerous high-ranking military officials were charged with plotting a coup against the AKP government. An important turning point in the fate of this alliance was the Gaza flotilla raid of 2010, where the 6 civilian ships headed to break the blockade of Gaza were countered by a military operation by Israel. While Erdogan outspokenly expressed his support for the Gaza Freedom Flotilla, Gülen criticized the government's attitude and its decision to support those who were delivering aid without Israel's consent. Within the scope of Operation Ergenekon, 7 Turkish journalists were arrested in March 2011. Among the arrested journalists were Ahmet Şık, who had been working on a book alleging that the Gülen movement had infiltrated the country's security forces, and Nedim Şener, who was trying to disclose the involvement of the Gülen movement in the assassination of Turkish-Armenian journalist Hrant Dink. The arrest of Şık and Şener was seen as the first cleavage within the alliance, as the Gülen movement showed the signs of following a separate agenda. In February 2012, the alliance started to break up. The conflict became apparent when a special authority prosecutor summoned Hakan Fidan, the head of the National Intelligence Organization, MIT, to testify regarding the talks between the MIT and the Kurdish insurgency group PKK. These events, known as the MIT crisis, have been widely seen as a plot by the Gülen movement and the declaration of war against Erdogan. But the war between Gülenists and the AKP officially started in November 2013. The alliance, which was weakened by the MIT crisis and followed by the Gezi Park protests, finally came to an end after the government's proposal of a new law that would force several private cram schools to shut down. Many of these schools were owned by the Gülenists, and they constituted an important economic and social resource for the movement. On December 17, 2013, Turkey woke up to an unprecedented corruption scandal. Some 50 people, including the sons of 3 cabinet ministers, the head of the state-controlled Halkbank, 3 construction sector tycoons, and an Iranian-Turkish businessman, Rıza Zarrab, were detained on accusations of money laundering, bribery, and fraud. One of the prosecutors involved in the corruption probe was Zekeriya Öz, who had famously headed the Ergenekon case. As a response to the investigation, the government initiated a wave of sackings and reshuffling within the police forces and the judiciary, targeting officials who were believed to be related to the investigation. The Ministry of Interior and Justice quickly changed their regulations, forcing security forces to inform their seniors of their actions at all times. On December 25, a further investigation was initiated for bribery and fraud charges, this time involving the then Prime Minister Erdogan's son. However, the police officers, newly appointed by the government, refused to carry out the prosecutor's orders. The AKP and Prime Minister Erdogan blamed the Gülen movement, which they named as a parallel state, referring to the movement's widespread presence within the state bureaucracy. Erdogan defined the operation as a judiciary coup against the government. After the both cases collapsed, the government initiated a comprehensive operation against the public employees who were suspects of having ties to Gülen, as well as Gülenist businesses and media outlets. Senior leaders of the movement fled the country. In May 2016, Turkey's National Security Council designated the Gülenists as a terrorist organization. Although the Prime Minister and his cabinet found themselves in the midst of a serious corruption scandal, the ruling AKP won the 2014 local elections, increasing its votes from 38% to 42%. In the following year's general elections, the AKP won the majority of the seats in the parliament again with 49% of the votes. July 15, 2016 was an extraordinary day in Turkey's history. Some fractions inside the Turkish military initiated a coup attempt to overthrow the government in the later hours of the evening. Turkish soldiers took to the streets and made a statement on the state TV channel claiming that the military was now in the charge of the country. However, the coup attempt was suppressed before the daybreak. For Erdogan and the AKP, the mastermind behind the coup attempt was clear: Fethullah Gülen. Therefore, the government initiated an unprecedented purge which led to the dismissal, detention or suspension of more than 135,000 state officials who had alleged ties to the Gülen movement. Several radio and TV channels and Gülen-related businesses were also shut down.